He rubbed shoulders with Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens.
It's actually a picture of me with Candace Owens at a conference. There's a photo of me with Beetlejuice at another conference I attended.
Now he's running from the MAGA movement and telling young people to do the same. So I talked to Jonathan a few days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He talked about his time in Turning Point. He says he was a member of Turning Point USA. He called himself ultra-MAGA. He went to the conventions. Then he described what happened when things got weird, whether it came to views on women or just the direction of where his conservative friends, his conservative community was going. You're going to hear his story, unapologetic, unbothered, unfiltered. Subscribe to Angelica's Answers if you want to hear from people, not politicians. Here's the interview. You were on the Trump train
Yeah.
for a while. How old are you? You look so young.
23 years old.
You are a baby, a young person.
Yep. And I was on the Trump train. I was raised in a very conservative family. My grandmother was a Tea Party activist during the Obama years. And so I was raised in that environment. I was always very passionate about politics in school. And then the events of 2020, that was when actually I went off to college that fall. And the events that year where we had the George Floyd protests, we had the pandemic, we had the election, that created that perfect storm that led me to be sucked into an organization like Turning Point USA.
I find that so fascinating, Turning Point USA. It was one of my friends, he works for a senator, and I was suggesting to him that she needs to do what Charlie Kirk is doing. Going to these campuses and reaching these young people, that's genius, actually.
It is genius, and he's making so much progress too with it. I mean, the youth vote actually heavily went in favor of Donald Trump. The young adult vote went heavily in favor of Donald Trump this last election. And it's so interesting to think about it, because Charlie Kirk years ago was just a guy that was on a college campus, and he barely had anybody showing up, right? He would have one or two people that would stand in line and argue with him. But now he has a whole crowd of people who are there to listen to him. And so it goes to show that with hard work and commitment and with outreach, you can really make a difference on college campuses.
I mean, yeah, that rhetoric. So how did this now take me back to 2020 and when you were in college? So when he came to your campus, you had already been, what was it that Charlie Kirk, MAGA, how did you get sucked in here?
Well, I think for me is that because of how divisive things were in 2020, and because of how passionate I've always been about politics and law, my degree is a political science and history. I just went all in 2020. I wanted to get involved. I was always active in student government when I was in high school. And so I was looking for that opportunity. And so I saw the booth for Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk wasn't there. But the campus outreach guy, I saw him there, and I went up there and I signed up for the organization. I wanted to get involved. And so I started off as the campus coordinator at the University of Idaho campus, just talking with students every day, doing tabling, getting people signed up. And then I went to the Student Action Summit that year in 2020. And it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of friends.
I saw.
But it also really opened my eyes to what the front lines of the conservative and the Republican Party looks like.
Well, listen, when you think of 2020, you think of Black Lives Matter protests, you think of COVID. Were those two issues the thing that kind of really drew you to Turning Point?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happened with Black Lives Matter was that everybody was divided. Everybody online was arguing in our community back home, our little small town. Everybody was arguing over what happened. And so everybody was taking a side. People were all on social media about it. And so, of course, me being the political guy, I got really fired up about it. And Charlie Kirk's rhetoric and the rhetoric of a lot of conservatives really appealed to me.
When you talk about, though, Black Lives Matter and this with the whole rhetoric around that, I mean, Charlie Kirk, I don't remember what he was saying back then. What was he saying?
He was basically saying that the movement was an extremist Marxist movement. It was a radical Marxist movement. The movement was fraudulent. He always pointed out the rioting. He said it was pretty hypocritical for us to be social distancing during the pandemic, while also Black Lives Matter protesters could be out on the street protesting. And so at the time, that really appealed to me. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So what I find so interesting is that, did you have a lot of friends? Obviously, you're a young man at that point. You're still young. Were a lot of young men and young women that you knew of kind of gravitating toward that? Because we see a lot of young men who really got behind Trump this last election. Did it start back in 2020? Did you see it back then?
No, not so much. I actually felt like we were kind of the resistance back then. This time I did not feel like we were the resist. This time I felt like the conservative movement was the dominant player this time. I felt like we had the upper hand. 2020 election, I mean, not a lot of people knew about Turning Point USA even back then.
Or Prager.
Yeah, or Prager University. I didn't even know what it was back then as well. And so I felt like we were more so in the resistance. I felt like everybody that I knew was hopping on kind of the Black Lives Matter train, the Democratic Party train. And so when you're in the resistance, it creates that energy where you feel like you're rebelling almost. And so that rebellious energy oftentimes feels really good.
And the Democrats did win that election. So when I looked, so you went to Turning Point, or was it, what conference when I saw the pictures of you with all those folks? Where were you?
So those were the Turning Point USA conferences, the student action summits. There was one in West Palm Beach in December of 2020 that I went to. And then there was one in the summer of 2021. That one was in Tampa, Florida. And then I also went to an America Fest conference at the end of 2021. That was in Phoenix, Arizona. That was my last conference before I kind of just started shifting away towards the movement.
Who did you meet? Because your pictures there, I remember, Candace Owens, there's so many different people.
Yeah, I met Charlie Kirk. I met Candace Owens. I met Anna Paulina Luna, who's currently in Congress right now. I met Mike Lindell. I got a photo with him. I saw Donald Trump Jr. speak, Kimberly Guilfoyle speak. I met Isabel Brown, who's a Turning Point influencer. I met a lot of the influencers that actually work for Turning Point USA. I actually connected with a lot of them. And so it was a really energizing experience for somebody who was young to be around that.
I'm not trying to get you in any trouble, but are these people legit? Do you believe that they believe what they're saying?
Not always. No, I don't actually. I don't actually think that they believe what they're saying. Well, in some cases, I do. Some cases I don't. They talk, the Turning Point USA movement, in my opinion, has made a major improvement with talking about a lot of economic issues. Charlie Kirk has talked about the housing affordability crisis. True. Charlie Kirk has talked about the fact that this generation is not going to have the same opportunities as previous generations. The problem with that I have, though, is I don't feel like he's proposing any solutions to actually address that. I think he's addressing the problem, right, to appeal to people. So his rhetoric is appealing, but he's not addressing any of the actual or proposing any solutions to address that. But when it comes to a lot of their rhetoric and what they believe in, I do think that they believe in a lot of what they say. I think they really do believe in it. I just think that they tend to focus on a lot of culture war stories, though, right? So Charlie Kirk has shifted towards the economic issues. I feel like the rest of the right is still stuck on culture war stories. And those are issues I really think they believe in, right? Whether it's transgender people, LGBTQ people, whether it be Black Lives Matter or abortion, they really believe in all of that. I just found, though, as a conservative, that focusing so much on the culture war stories is not going to move us forward as a party because that doesn't address the underlying problems in our society.
I got to ask you this as a woman. What is their deal with women and the place of women in society?
Well, I can answer that for you. And this was something that really started to turn me off about the movement, is that they kind of promote this traditional role for women, right? They believe 1950s when women were working in the home, that is the ideal society we should be aiming for. And I was around groups of people. I was around influencers. I was at group chats where people would say that we should repeal the 19th Amendment because women were too emotional to vote, or that we should give women the death penalty for seeking abortions. And all of that really started to turn me off because it came off in a way where it was like they were trying to control women, right? They were trying to control women. They don't want women to kind of make their own decisions about their lives, right? They kind of believe in this hierarchical structure in society, right, where women are not allowed to be at the top. And I just found those views to be very regressive. In the 21st century, I think, honestly, in the 21st century, I think we should be, telling women that they should be able to do what they want, right? They should be moving their lives forward. If they want to go start a family, right, which is what Charlie Kirk's promoting, they should be able to go do that. But if they want to have a career, right, they should be able to go do that. And if they want to do both, that can also be possible.
You're in the thick of this right now, and you're mainly motivated by what? You say some of these economic issues, you were enticed with being the resistance and all that. So what are you thinking that you're going to accomplish here? What's the goal?
Well, I'm thinking the goal was that we were going to be a true populist movement in the United States that was going to undo a lot of the corruption we see in government right now that is disillusioned so many Americans. So when I became a part of these circles and I'm hearing people talk about culture war stories and women and traditional values and stuff, it really started to turn me off because I was like, this movement has so much potential to be a really solid anti-corruption movement, you know, a true movement for political change. And I just felt like it was either about traditional values, culture war issues, or it was just about being loyal to whatever Donald Trump says and whatever Donald Trump wants. And that's just not really appealed to me.
Why were they so loyal to Donald Trump and what you saw?
I think that in this day and age of declining identities, right, where we see a decline of identities through things like family, community, friends, we're seeing the rise of these new fringe identities that people are finding through online communities, yes, whether it be Bitcoin, whether it be guns, or whether even socialism and communism. You know, there's a lot of those online communities I see as well as I'm in the online atmosphere. And I think Trump, right, is one of those identities for a lot of these people. I think a lot of them see themselves in him. They see him as a successful businessman. And that's where a lot of us want to see them one day. So that's why I think that they find him so enticing.
So here you are. So it's 2020. The election happens. Biden wins. When do you, okay, doubts are creeping in. When did the doubts start creeping in and when do you jump off?
As soon as Biden won, I already started to kind of question things, but maybe not to the extreme. I didn't believe in a lot of the election conspiracy theories at all. I thought it was pretty clear cut that Joe Biden won. And I thought it was now time for the party to come together and figure out why we lost and how we can do better next time. I'm a pragmatic individual, so that's always my mindset with things. But a lot of people kept pushing this idea that Trump won, it was a giant conspiracy. And if you weren't on board with that, right, you need to get out of the movement and you're a traitor. And that kind of black and white mindset, very irrational mindset, I found very unappealing to me. And then I remember around the J6 situation happened, and I was a little bit shocked by how many people were trying to rationalize what happened, because it was pretty clear to me that wasn't okay. But people like Charlie were kind of downplaying what happened that day with January 6th. More principled conservatives like Ben Shapiro, they were the ones that were sticking by, right, this was wrong, the election was not stolen, it was not rigged, and I really respected that. But it felt people within the Turning Point USA crowd were really honing in on this idea that the election was stolen and that anybody that says it wasn't stolen, right, is a traitor to Donald Trump and the movement. And I just didn't agree with that mindset. Kind of came off as a cultish mindset that many of us accuse the left of having.
So is that when you kind of got off shortly after that?
Not really, right? Not really. And it was just because I was so entrenched in the movement at this point, you know, I felt like I could make it better. And so after Biden took office, I kind of continued being a part of the so-called resistance. Yeah. I went to a Turning Point USA conference that summer. And that summer, something really weird happened in Tampa.